Thank you for co-creating this moment here with me on Divine Within. I'm an entity named Lucian, and here on Divine Within, we remember the power within, the kingdom within, and that reality bends from within. Discussing on today's transmission, updating the software of yourself being the collection of experiences that you have identified with, internalized, and assigned to your understanding of who you believe that you are. But if you really ask who is doing the asking of who, you'll find that there's nothing there but source, but field, but consciousness, but universe, but God, but goddess. There's no one there. But we have in these avatar meat suits an ego, and you should be in the continual process of dismantling oppressive structures within your ego, within your understanding of self. However, I don't think that you can, at least it's my disposition, that I don't think you can just do away with the ego entirely. I mean, I suppose you could, like Ram Dass talks about becoming nobody. And ultimately, I think that's where we're headed. But if I were to think about like an egoless person, I mean, I think of someone who's not speaking, who's not talking, who has no interest, who is hardly alive. I mean, we need somewhat of way of organizing ourselves as we dwell here in the material as individualized expressions of the all that is. However, you want to make sure that that idea of self is not your creative power as an individualized expression of source consciousness weaponized against yourself. And most of us are conditioned to use our source power creation to create an environment and a lifestyle that, one, conforms to the generalized standard. And that generalized standard then is what? Oppressive, low self-worth, lack of self-love, scarcity, fear, the thought that there's not enough for everyone, the thoughts of notions of competition and of stress and of strife. That's how most of us are conditioned to use our creative powers. And then we continue to experience the fruits of that conditioning, feeling as though we're victims, not realizing that once we step out of the first household that we're aware of, we have the ability to, I would say, I don't love terms of reprogramming and deprogramming because that suggests that there's something that you have to do, and there's really nothing that you have to do, but I would say that you have to be mindful about what you agree to within yourself, what you determine and allocate your I am to be. And that I am, what we determine ourselves to be, how we identify with ourselves, is dependent upon our agreements. And our agreements being what we've seen enough times or what we believe with enough certainty to assign to ourselves as the essence of our experience. So updating the software of self, this is going to be a briefer message. I think I say that every single transmission, and we'll see. But the intention here today is to be a bit briefer in the sense that you've heard about affirmations and claiming that which you desire to be and claiming it in the now, living in the end, deciding that, and not just deciding, because the decision is the choice to eliminate all other options, but not just deciding, but knowing that the truth of this reality is that the moment that you assign your desired state, your desired sense of self, your desired reality, it is happening. However, it might not be rendered in the material 3D as immediate. So you have to stay in alignment with that frequency of reality before it materializes. For what appears to be time, but time doesn't really exist. So you're aware of that, or if you weren't, now you are. You're aware of that. But it's also equally important to remember that it talks about in the Bible that you cannot serve two masters, and there's many valuable interpretations from that particular script, but the way that we're applying it here today in transmission is that you can observe fear or you can observe trust. You can observe not love or you can observe love, I guess, because I don't even think hatred is the opposite of love. I think hatred is just love inverted. But essentially, I mean, I think all things come down, because all humans really want all of our manifestations and stuff and things that we want come down to peace, truth, love, beauty, abundance, some combination of those things or a derivative of those things. What we're here to do is to live our idealized valuation of what existence can be, how we return to wholeness, living in the context and the appearance and the illusion of separation. So we really only want these at least representations of these values that bring us back to wholeness. But you cannot observe love if you are also observing, I guess, maybe a kind of lack. I wouldn't say that those are exactly opposites, but you understand what I'm saying. You cannot observe your bondage and observe your freedom at the exact same time. You can't believe that I'm a victim and I'm being oppressed, yet I want to manifest the life of my dreams, the money, the career, the partner, the circumstance. You can't observe both of those things at once. So it's just as equally important as to what you, and think about it this way, like, what if it's not about what tip or trick or technique that I have to add in? What if it's more about what I need to remove my attention from? And that could be a myriad of things. I was going through a period of my life. I used to work in country music radio, and I went through a period of things in my life that were essentially, for lack of a better word, cataclysmic. They destroyed my entire notion of what it meant to exist in this world. And I stopped listening to country. I wasn't working in country music radio at that point in time, but I stopped listening to country music at that point in time because I was like, I'm already dealing with the consequences and the fallout and the deaths and the understandings of self and the dismantling and the unbecoming and the dark night of the soul. And I'm already just, swallowed. I felt swallowed, not hopeless, not helpless, but I felt consumed for a period of time in the unbecoming. In tarot, they talk about it as something about like a tower fall or something, in a tower moment. I was in my tower moment. So like listening to country music, talking about, beer, loss, and trucks, and more loss, and poverty, and farmland, and farm work. That was just all such a kind of, that would have, I guess I would say, compounded the experience that I was having during that era of my life. So I stopped listening to the music, and it didn't mean that I stopped liking it or that I stopped resonating with it in some way, but I couldn't allow it to be, I couldn't allow that type of, this is something I can control, yet I'm compounding the essence of this experience into my reality, thus shaping my perception of it even that much more while it's already hard. So I'm not saying necessarily cut out music, but I am saying, if you want people that, for instance, love you for you, then you're going to have to stop pouring so much. I used to do a lot of work with this when I was a people-pleasing coach several years ago. You're going to, and it was very hard for the people that I was coaching to understand that, like, your relationships are going to change because they're used to a version of you that abandons yourself at the drop of the dime for virtually no reason. So when you stop doing that, is there a possibility that those people could adapt and could adjust? Yes, but likely not, because that's not the dynamic that they agreed to when they came into relationship with you. So these relationships will change dramatically, or you will lose them, but they're not going to stay the same. And if your relationships are staying the same, then that means you're still the same, which means you're wasting your money talking to me, which I know you don't want to do. So if you want love and trust in your life, then you have to start being love and trust. You have to start living love and trust. But that's still even talking about the adding in of loving and trust. I mean, like, no, you're going to have to remove your attention from the things in your life that it seem to be evidence that you should not love and trust yourself, the world, or circumstances around you. At the end of the day, as long as you're alive, you're okay. Relatively. At the end of the day, all the stresses and all of the strife that we go through and oh God, is this going to happen? At the end of the day, if you're still alive, you're okay. You survived it. We live in this type of jungle in the mind, and we think that there are lions and tigers and cheetahs always chasing us. And the lions and tigers and cheetahs are like a credit card bill, someone we didn't get a text back from, and if we're respected at work, like we live in this threatened state of mind. We live in survival mode, or all this nervous system bullshit. We live so activated and so quote unquote triggered over, if you zoom out of it, experiences that really have to do more so with the ego and the stories the ego has about itself based on the conditioning it received, and maybe not, if you were to zoom out of that, actual things you should be. I mean, you ask anybody how they are and they say stressed. It's just like, well, fuck, take a fucking break, you know? Take a fucking break. You know, the grass is going to be there tomorrow. The bill is going to be there tomorrow. You know, what we're not going to get back is this time to share with people that we love and care about. We're not going to get back the time. Now, time doesn't really exist, but I mean, you know, as we move through this world, what we're not going to get back is the opportunity to feel, the opportunity to experience, the opportunity to be present, although there is an eternal now. You know, we're not going to get the time back to enjoy ourselves, to enjoy this 3D experience of living in a material world. You're going to be you think you're going to be 88 on your deathbed thinking I should have sent more emails? You know, now I understand we have priority, and as long as we live in a material world, we must act. As long as we live in a material world, we must act, and I am a full proponent of that. I'm not suggesting that we just throw everything to the wind and do absolutely nothing, but I am saying at the same time that, you know, the material world should be weighted with priorities that enliven the self rather than the things that feel as though they just continually zap our energy, and not zap, drain our energy, and we call them the necessities of life, when really I view them to be perhaps points of maintenance, but they oftentimes, if they move from being the necessities of life to, I believe, contributions to a type of living death. So if you are to manifest the life that represents that which you desire, to be the version of yourself that is living in the life that you desire, you have to start removing your focus, not in a way of you're ignoring it or you're pushing it away, but you have to start removing your focus from the things that are not the essence of that desired reality. You know, if you want people to think that you're attractive and charismatic, you're not going to keep focusing on that time in 7th grade where you failed the spelling bee, or that time that you know, tripped over yourself in 9th grade, maybe down the flight of freshman stairs, and everyone looked and everyone laughed. You're not going to keep room. You're not going to keep, because everything that you think about, you're bringing into the present moment, and you're aligning with and resonating with in one way. So it's not about necessarily always controlling your thoughts with a type of friction and urgency, but with a kind of mindfulness that you have to drive the car. We're talking, when we say conscious creation, that seems to be such a, just like, that's just in this community, conscious creation, but like, no, because what's been happening is that you've been driving unconsciously. The conditioning's been driving for you. So when we say conscious creation, we're not talking about, oh, consciously, like make it up and be intentional about it. It's not just about intention. It's about having the fucking lights on inside. It's about being present with yourself and deciding that, you know, out of the 70,000 thoughts that we have in a day, and out of the 5 to 10% that we are aware of the thoughts that I'm aware of, I'm not gonna assign past bullshit to myself, and I'm not gonna assign future fears to myself, because all I'm then doing is creating that shit in the present moment. So you stop chasing after you know, Bob. If Bob doesn't appear to be into it, if Bob is not being verbose and being active about his affections for you, be they friendship or otherwise, then you leave Bob alone. And furthermore, Bob is just a representative shell of what you believe about yourself that you're seeing reflected back at you. So furthermore, if you're not a friend to yourself, if you don't desire your attention, if you don't desire your own love and your own presence, then Bob could exist or not exist. That's actually beside the point. It's all about you and what you choose to observe about yourself, which means removing your attention from the things that are not what you desire to experience. And with that, signing off today's transmission of Divine Within. I am an entity named Lucian. Again, thank you for co-creating this moment with me. If you would like my one-on-one personalized guidance and assistance in diagnosing perhaps blocks you might have and dismantling your ego so that you can live the life that you desire, those links are provided for you down below. Check out the Liberation Chronicle, which is the written word of this platform. And there is a podcast called Dispatches from the Edge of Obvious that is a Spotify exclusive. Also linked in the Heaven on Earth Source Codex, which is an anti-system system of manifesting, is there. It's all there. I would appreciate you subscribing and tuning in for our next transmission of Divine Within. And remember to be good to yourselves and others, because everyone's just a version of you anyway.